Discussing about that what is meant by organ specific manifestation and tissue specific manifestation. There are certain signs and indications because of which we can discuss that the person is suffering from the disease. There are certain signs, certain indications which indicate that the body, that the cells are not functioning properly. Now, these signs and indications which indicate that that the body of a person is not functioning properly, it's not working up to mark. Those signs and indications uh, are described as symptoms. Now, how these symptoms will arise in a person, or how these how the disease give rise to symptoms, we have to discuss about that. That if there are the symptoms, what kind of symptoms will be there? What type of symptoms will be there? And does these symptoms depend upon depend upon the situation, or how these symptoms arise? If there are the symptoms, if there are the indications, how these indications arise? Let me tell you that every organism, if we talk about those organisms which causes the infectious disease, microbes, if I talk about, these microbes have evolved themselves in such a way that they will enter into the body through specific means. Each and every microbe does not use the same way, same pathway to enter into the body of the organism. So they use different pathways, and uh, these pathways will decide that what type of symptom will be seen in the organism. For example, if somebody has the cold, generally the symptoms will be a running nose or sore throat, because the microbe which causes the infection has entered into the body of the organism through the nose, through the respiratory tract. So, which is the first target organ of that microbe? The target organ of the microbe will be the respiratory tract, and symptoms will be generated by the respiratory tract only. So, this is what we discuss about. This is what we mean about organ specific or tissue specific manifestation of the various symptoms, like disease causing microbe which enter into body through different pathways will attack that particular organ only through which it enter. For example, if the uh, microbe enter into the body through the mouth, along with the food, along with the contaminated water, then it will move through the esophagus and down the stomach. So the symptoms will be infection in gut. There can be stomach ache, there can be vomitings. So that means that the symptoms which arise in the organism will depend upon the target organ, will depend upon the target tissue, or will depend upon the pathway that is being used by the organism, so that it will enter into the body of that particular organism. It's being used by microbe, so the symptom will depend upon the pathway and the target organ where it targets, where it lives. that will depend upon the symptoms will depend upon these two things. One is pathway, through the pathway through which the microbe enter into the body of the organism, or the organ or the tissue which is particularly targeted by that microbe. And that is what we know as organ specific and tissue specific manifestation. It means that the signs and symptoms of the disease will depend on the target organ. If it enter through the respiratory tract, the target organ can be the lungs. The target organ can be the target organs can be the lungs. Target organ will be the whole respiratory tract. And what will be the symptoms? Symptoms will be quite related to that only. If the symptoms will be running nose, there can be cough, there can be breathlessness. So that's what I mean to say, that if the microbe enter into the body of an organism, the sign and symptom of the disease will depend upon the track through which it enter into the body, the pathway through which enter into the body of an organism, and the target organ or the target tissue. For example, if just now I have discussed with you that the brain fever, Japanese encephalitis, it enters into the body through the mosquito bite, and through the blood it travels to the brain and infects the brain. And what is the symptoms? If we try to describe the symptoms will be headache, dizziness, nausea, breathlessness, and uh, those which are somehow related with these symptoms which are somehow related with the brain only. So the symptoms which are shown by the patient will depend upon the microbe, the pathway used by the microbe, and the organ which is the target one, where the microbe attack. So that's what we call as organ specific manifestation or tissue specific manifestation. Apart from these, let me tell you, apart from the organ and tissue specific symptoms, there are certain common symptoms also. There are certain symptoms which will depend upon, as I've told you, that there are the symptoms which are arising once the pathway which is being used by the microbe, the pathway chosen by the microbe or the target organ chosen by the microbe. But there are some other indications also, other symptoms also, which are apart from the tissue specific manifestation, which are apart from the tissue specific or organ specific indications. Most of the common effects depend on the fact that once the immune system enter into the body of an organism, our immune system will respond, our immune system will get activated, right? And these once our immune system get activated, it will give rise to inflammation. Can be in terms of fever, inflammation can be in terms of swelling or pain. Sometimes allergy may occur in response to the microbe enter into the body of an organism, and they will not be related to any particular tissue or particular organ. So these are the general symptoms. These are the general symptoms which arise because of once the microbe enter into the body, it attacks the immune system and our immune system respond to that, right? Our immune system respond to it. And this, how our immune system respond to it, An active immune system will recruit many cells so that it can kill the organism, it can kill the microbe which enter into the body of the organism. And this recruitment process is known as inflammation. As a part of this process, there will be some local effects, like the local effect can be swelling, the local effect can be pain. Recruitment process ka jo side effect hoga, that will be in terms of pain or in terms of the swelling. So these are the one which are the general symptoms which arise into the body of an organism because of the inflammation, right? So this was how there are the tissue specific and uh, tissue specific manifestations as well as organ specific manifestation. So along with the organ specific manifestation and tissue specific manifestation, there are certain general symptoms which arise because once our immune because our response because the response of immune system towards that microbe, so that what happens once it enter into the body of the organism, our immune system will respond by recruiting many more cells so that it can kill that particular microbe which enter into the body of an organism. And this recruitment process is known as inflammation, and inflammation give rise to the local effects like swelling, pain, right? So this local effect will give rise to the general body symptoms. But let me tell you the severity. If our immune system is as such which can fight on with the disease on its own, then why do we need what is the need of why then the person become ill? Question is that if our immune system respond automatically, then why the person sometimes become ill? हम बीमार क्यों पड़ जाते हैं if our immune system respond to that microbe by recruiting more cells so that it can kill the microbe? It will depend upon the severity of the infection. How much, if microbes are very less in number, has entered into the body of an organism. Otherwise, on daily basis, we are having millions of microbes. But our immune system has developed in such a manner that it can kill many of the microbes on its own without developing this. But if the microbes enter into large number in the body, at that time our system, our recruitment system, our immune system is not in that position that it can fight. So that is why at that time the organism become ill. Organism is ill, right? So the immune system is the major factor to determine the number of microbes surviving in the body. If the number of microbes which survive or which attack the body is more, if the infection is more severe, so at that time the person will develop the signs and symptoms, the indication of the disease. But if the infection is mild, our recruitment system, our immune system is going to handle that infection on its own, right? Now we have to understand that if there are signs and symptoms which persist in an organism and which indicate that the body of an organism is not functioning properly, right? And the person is suffering from some kind of infectious disease, then what to do? What should be our next step? although our immune system will respond in that manner that it will try to kill that microbe which enter into the body of an organism, but if the infection is severe, it is not able to respond on its own, and the signs and symptoms is shown by the organism. Then what should be our next step? Our next step should be the treatment of this particular infectious causing organism. So that is what we call as principle of treatment. Then the second step which has to be followed by the organism if the disease persists over a period of time, as well as if the signs and indication persist over the couple of days. Then what to do? We have to go to the doctor. We have to go to the particular medical practitioner, and there will be certain you can say methodology which will be followed by that particular practitioner, medical practitioner or doctor. And what will be that? That is known as principle of treatment. The treatment of the infectious disease is two-way. It's a two-way treatment. The two ways are, one is lower down the disease or to reduce the effect of the disease. And second is to kill the pathogens. Pathogen, what do you mean by to kill the pathogen? That is to kill the microbe because of which the disease is caused. On the basis of the, let me tell you how the doctor is going to recommend the treatment. The doctor is going to recommend the treatment by treating the symptoms so that the effect of the disease can be reduced on the basis of the signs and on the basis of the symptoms. The doctor will try to use this principle. That is, first, he will provide a certain medication which will reduce the effect of the disease. Second, it will try to, the doctor will prescribe us such a medicine which will kill the microbe. Let me tell you, for certain disease, for bacterial disease, which will not last for, there are a cycle. Once the cycle is complete, and then the microbe will die on its own. For example, if we talk about the cold, if we talk about the influenza, if we talk about the common cold, what happens? Signs are there, indications are there. If these indications persist over the longer time, once the cycle is complete, once the 7 days are complete, it will get eliminated on its own. But if the disease, if the severity of disease is more, at that time only we have to go to the doctor. In the same manner, if we are having stomach ache or infection for 1 day, stomach infection, stomach upset for a day or two, we can do it on our own. We need not to consult the doctor. But if the symptoms persist over the longer period, at that time we need to consult the doctor. So what will be the criteria that will be used by the doctor? The doctor will do the two-way treatment, the two-step treatment to the infection disease causing microbe. One will be to reduce the effect of the disease, and one will be to kill the microbe. But for that, doctor has to be sure that what kind of microbe has entered into the body, and for that he will give us the diagnostic test. Once you go to the doctor, he will prescribe you certain medicines to reduce the effect of. For example, he will give us the medication so that the fever can be brought under control, pain or loose motion can be brought under control. But if the symptoms persist over a period of the time, a day or two, then the doctor will give you the diagnostic test so as to be sure if the disease is there, what kind of disease, which microbe is responsible for that particular disease, so that It can prescribe us that medication only which is meant for that microbe. Like a specific drug, for example, a bacterial drug will not work against viral infection, right? So doctor has to be very, very sure that if the drug is given to the patient, if the medicine is prescribed to the patient, then the medicine, then the doctor should know what microbe, which microbe is responsible for that particular disease. So it, the doctor has to be very, very much ensure about that, what kind of microbe has it been responsible for cause of the disease. So for that, doctor prescribes the diagnostic test. And once the diagnostic test is carried out, after that, the doctor will specify that what kind of medication, what kind of drug should be prescribed to the patient, so that, because the drug which is prescribed for the bacterial infection, which will not be prescribed for the viral, which is caused by the virus. All right. So this is how the uh, now what is the reason why it's not possible to prescribe the antibiotic, that means antibacterial drug, to the antiviral drug, and why it is so difficult to make the antiviral drug than to make the antibiotic? Let me tell you one important thing, that is why it is difficult. How can we kill the microbe? Once the doctor prescribes the medicine and the patient take the medicine, then how it works, we have to understand that phenomena so that we can develop the drug further. How does the drug work will depend upon how the drug work. First of all, we will describe about that, how the drug work, how the medication works. If there is a bacterial infection, let me tell you, if there is the infection which is being caused by the bacteria, and what will happen, doctor will prescribe the antibiotics. Now how do the antibiotic work? Every drug which is there for the microbial infection work in this manner only. What, you know, in order to stay alive inside the body of the organism. For example, if the tuberculosis bacteria enter into the body of an organism through respiratory tract, that bacteria which causes the tuberculosis, that is Mycobacterium tuberculosis, it has to stay alive. Otherwise, our immune system would have killed it. But infection is severe, so it remains within the lungs of the patient. For staying alive, it has to do the certain processes. You know, how do we stay alive? Why we are alive? Because we inhale, we exhale, we require energy, we require food, right? There are certain processes which help us to stay alive, and these processes are called as life processes. Life processes are nutrition, respiration, transportation, excretion, control, and coordination. Right? Now, how the bacteria has certain ways, right? Certain ways through which it can stay alive. It has its own pathway, that how to do the process of respiration. It has its own process, that to do the process of nutrition, that is to obtain the food. And then it has its own way, and that how to do the process of excretion. Because agar ye sari processes nahi hongi, then bacteria will not stay alive. And let me tell you, fortunately, bacteria does not, like each and every cell of our body has you is able to do all the life processes, because in fundamental unit of cell chapter we have discussed that each and every cell which is alive is because of it performs all the life process. And luckily microbe, this bacteria also has the life process. Microbe जो bacteria है, it also and show the life process. And luckily it do not uses the life process of the it do not use those pathway through which the cell carry out all the life process. ये वो रास्ता नहीं लेकर जाता है through which the cell carry out all the life processes. It has its own path. ये मतलब if it has to respire, it will use its own biopathway. If it has to do the nutrition, अगर इसको खाना खाना है बैक्टीरिया को to stay alive, it will have its own pathway. Like the pathway, like we are having our own, we are having the pathway how the how the food will enter into the body. We are having the pathway that how the oxygen will enter into the body. In the same manner, there are pathways which is being used by the each and every cell of our body to do the life process, to do process of nutrition, process of respiration, process of excretion, process of control and coordination. And bacteria is a living cell, so it will also do it. But let me tell you, it has its own biochemical pathways. What the antibiotic try to do is it try to block these pathways only. वो इन्हीं रास्तों को खत्म कर देता, ब्लॉक कर देता है. And if the pathways are blocked, it will not be able to do the life process. And once it is not able to do the life process, it will die. Ultimately, it will die. And this is how the antibiotic work. But let me tell you why we have not been able to develop the medicine of COVID so far, because it's a virus. A virus uses the pathway of the cell, of the host cell, right? The cell, for example, if virus attacks a particular cell, that particular cell has a pathway to carry out the life process. But let me tell you, virus, चाहे कोई भी virus हो, it uses the biochemical pathway of the cell only. And if the drug is being provided so that to block the biochemical pathway which is being used by the virus to stay alive, then ultimately what we are blocking? We are blocking the biochemical pathway of the cell, and ultimately we are damaging the whole host cell. That is why it is very, very difficult to make an antiviral drug than to make an antibacterial drug. If it would have been a bacteria, then definitely we would have been.